Well, thank you, Becky, so much for joining us today. Tell us about your earliest Camp Mac memory.
Well, I think probably my earliest Camp Mac memory would be as a camper. I was a junior camper there. I think back in those days, our first chance to go to camp was after fourth grade. So after I completed fourth grade, I was a junior camper through the district camping programs before Camp Mac was doing program internally. So those would be my early memories. And Joanne Dieter is one of my earlier camp directors that I can remember. So that was a huge influence on my life and probably helped me think about and frame women in leadership. And then, of course, also my dad and mom started being volunteer camp directors, deans back then. And so I got to tag along with them. So I also have lots of memories of kind of hanging out with the leadership and being the camp dean's kid.
Fun.
Yeah.
So, as you grew up, you were on summer staff, correct?
Yes. For all my years through high school and college. When Dad went there as director in '75, January of '75, then I started on summer staff in '75. So 75 through '82 on summer staff, seasonal staff. Although we kind of laughed because Mom and I worked year round, even though we weren't on the payroll back then, because it's just kind of what had to happen, you know? Yeah, so we called it summer staff, but Mom and I were year-round volunteers, to say the least.
Yeah.
And then left, graduated from college, Manchester in '82, and got married and started working in South Bend. We bought a home in South Bend and realized I was working with a communications company, and I thought I always wanted to work with the public because of my experience at camp. And then I kind of realized maybe I want to work with the church because there is a bit of a difference. So I really felt the calling to go back to camp. And at the time, Jane Worsler Yoder was the administrative assistant, and she told Dad that she was going to be leaving, I think, to join her husband and help him with his business. And so I expressed an interest in coming back on year-round staff. I think then the only full-time year-round staff were Arden as executive director and Mike Kaufman as facilities manager. Yeah, and that was it. Kate Worsler was there year-round, but not full-time on food service management. So I wanted to come back, and Dad said absolutely no way, wouldn't hear of it. And I said, oh, come on. So I wrote in this nice formal resume with this long page, multi-page letter to go with it, all the reasons I should be able to come back even if I was his kid. And so even though staffing decisions don't typically go to a board of directors, he did talk to his executive committee about what was the best thing to do. And there wasn't anything at camp I hadn't done, 9 summers on summer staff. And I had managed the office. I'd set up actually the computers, the first set of computers that the camp used. I'd managed camp store, I had managed the waterfront. So boom, there I was back full time in 1983.
And then you took over as executive director in '94?
Correct.
Okay. And then what year was your last year as executive director?
2001, technically. I left at the end of 2001. I volunteered the first couple months of '02 just to help wrap up books and make sure everything was in order. But yeah, technically I was done the end of '01.
So in that time, you've hit on it that you've done a ton at camp. You've filled and done so many different corners of what we have here. But if you could pick one camp activity that you could do all summer and only that activity, what would you spend your summer doing?
Well, technically, it's a camp activity, but it's a bit privileged, I think, in that it's a lifeguard activity. Probably one of my favorite things was swimming back and forth to Rock Island. Yeah. And on occasion, once we even swam from Becker Beach all the way to the public beach. So yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, the length of the lake. We wanted to do that, so that was great fun. So yeah, I loved the swimming and the lifeguarding and the waterfront, and that was. I think I have gills probably somewhere. Now I have to laugh. Also tell you one of the camp activities I don't think we really would want to do again, and I have to laugh about it because I was on call on a Friday night. Groups were coming in. This was during retreat season, and groups were coming in. And I got a call because I always was greeting the groups and getting them settled in on Friday night. I got a call from Sarah Major that they needed to have a urinal plunged. And I'm like, why do you plunge a urinal? So I called the faithful trusty husband Paris and said, honey, I'm in the office. I can't leave, but can you go plunge a urinal? And guess what he said? why do you need to plunge a urinal? So that's one of our fun camp stories. But he did go down and fix the urinal for me. So he's a good man.
Good. Good for him.
Yeah, you'll probably hear me use a lot of we language
Yeah.
because, I think about my leadership at camp, but it was always a team leadership. I either worked alongside Dad as executive when Arden was there, or I worked alongside a great ministry team, and along with Paris. I mean, I couldn't have done it without him. He did a lot of things beside me that, yeah. So it was always a team effort. So you may hear me use we a lot.
Makes sense. So in your time at Camp Mac, how have you really connected with God during that time?
Well, I think all of my life I have found God most easily present in the out of doors, in creation. Growing up, my parents, we had a little 13-foot travel trailer that we took back and forth to annual conference every year, and we camped our ways there. We camped our way back through the national parks. Biochem degree, environmental science degree from Manchester. My dream was to be a park ranger, a naturalist. That kind of dwindled away as they became almost more police people in the parks than they were naturalists or educators. So I've always had a love of creation. And for me, that's where I most quickly connect with God. So I was obviously in the out of doors at camp. So I think that's, the out of doors would be the place for me.
Given that camp has so many ecosystems here, people always think of Lake Wabi, but there's wetlands, there's prairie. Do you have a favorite ecosystem that you like to go explore here at camp?
No, I don't think I have a bias. I have appreciation for all of them. And so I think I like the diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the really cool things about it. It's actually not too unlike the different faith traditions or faith approaches that come with the multi-denominational groups that come and use camp. For me, that was a big part of the experience for me too. I'll never forget Paris and I out one evening just taking a walk in the summer, and we wandered down, and it was a hosted camp. It wasn't a Church of the Brethren program. And they were having a big campfire down at the Sarah Major Campfire Circle. So we just kind of stood behind Sarah Major by the lake and watched and commented about how different that experience was. It was a conference style camp. It wasn't small group camping. So it was a very different experience than what most of our Church of the Brethren camps are. But I can remember the conversation between Paris and I being, there isn't a one size fits all, whether it's an ecosystem or whether it's a faith system or whether it's relationships, or there's just so much diversity. And for me, that was probably one of the most meaningful things, and probably one of the most formational things for my faith and my spiritual journey, was to understand that we all have different walks, and yet we worship and experience the same great creator God. So that was an important part of my camp life.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people really underestimate here at camp, is the number of other groups that we serve.
Amazing how widespread that can be. In fact, we had laughed early on, before Paris and I were even married. We headed on a camping trip out west, and we were in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we're walking down the streets of Hot Springs, Arkansas, because we were hanging out at the park there, and somebody went by in a pickup truck and yelled, "Hey, Becky." And we both looked at each other like, no, that wasn't, yeah. Then they come back, "Becky Ball." And it's like, okay, that person knows me. We should probably pull over. So he pulled over, and we went over to talk to him. And here it was one of the pastors with, at that time, the Church of God of the Abrahamic Faith's National Youth Camp. And here we are in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Larry's like, pulling me off the street. Paris is like, "Can I not take you anywhere that you don't know people?" But all because of the camp experience,
Well, with your all your years at Camp Mac, now being an outsider, what is something that you see now that excites you or gives you hope for the future of Camp Mac?
Well, I hope that I always hold on to hope, no matter the circumstances. But I think the leadership at camp, I'm excited about Gene being there. I think he brings a good sense of stability and a good sense of history to camp. He's been engaged in Camp Mac all the years I can remember, which is a lot of years, right? So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the core staff that are there. I think that there's an opportunity to kind of rethink, especially right now in the midst of the pandemic, to rethink how we do experiential learning and experiential faith kind of experiences. So I'm hopeful that I think you've got good staff there who are creative enough to think around that and have great outcomes. Remember back on the 75th anniversary and having Andrew Young at Camp Mac. That was another
my 90th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of my really coolest experiences, probably, was being able to engage with Andrew Young. That was pretty neat.
Wonderful. What is something that you think you have done at Camp Mac that not many people have been able to do that you wish more would experience?
I was going to use the line of swimming to the beach, but that's probably not what you're looking for. What I have done at Camp Mac that I wish more people would experience. Well, my bias is obviously leadership. I mean, but not everybody's going to get the opportunity to have that experience, right? But the team leadership, I think the team ministry, I think the service. I mean, as much dedication and hard work that goes into being a staff person, there's also a gift that we get back that only people who have gotten to do that understand or experience. Yeah, I was on Facebook last night, and there was a 1-year summer group, posting, "Oh, that was the best year of my life. Oh, you remember this, remember that." And I'm like, "Oh, I miss you guys." And there's an experience or a camaraderie or something that comes out of the serving together that I wish more people could have.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Do you have? Go ahead. What was that?
Lots of good memories.
Yeah. Do you have any specific memories or stories that you'd like to share?
Well, Paris just walked in the room. That's why I've looked over there a couple times, trying to think through if there's any specific stories or memories. Shared the one about the campfire. That was, I think the sense of larger church with a big C. I think the tenets of the Church of the Brethren and seeing those lived out, whole experiential education for people to see the church come alive. I know one story I always used to tell the counselors when we would do counselor training is something to the effect of, a little boy having a really traumatic experience. And I think in the story I often told was that maybe he'd had a parent killed or something in a car accident. The essence of it was that, somebody was saying, well, God, God is always with you. God is always there. And the little boy said, but sometimes I need God with skin on. And so, that's what I think about when I think about camp, that when we are there and in relationship to one another, we become God with skin on. We become vessels through which God can work. And so that's, I used to work really hard some days, and I used to get really, really tired, and I used to have to step back and say, God can do this work in spite of me, not just in the midst of me. I need to let go and trust God to do the work. And I think God does wonderful things through the people at camp and the experiences. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a beautiful analogy of God being there, but needing God with skin on it. Yeah.
Yeah. The other story I'd use that was more nature related, which I've always loved too, and I'm sure you've heard this one, not specific to Camp Mac, but the story about the little boy that's walking along the beach and all the starfish have washed up.
Oh, yes.
The little boy picks up the starfish and starts throwing them back in, and somebody comes along, some skeptic, right, comes along and says, well, you can't save all the starfish. It's never going to matter. You can't save them all. And he picks one up, throws it in the ocean, says, what matters to this one?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your leadership in your years at Camp Mac and for sharing some of your memories as we celebrate 95 years.
Amen. You are very welcome. And thank you for your service.